The meeting is called to order. I think we just have one absent member tonight. Dana will not be here this evening.
I don't see John out there either.
Oh, John isn't there? You didn't hear from him?
It's just us.
Well, maybe he'll join us. So, two issues for the agenda tonight. First, we have an application from the St. Pierre's for a reconstruction on Torsey Pond. And secondly, we have public hearings on two ordinance revision proposals, the solar ordinance and a revision concerning an alternate CEO in the land use ordinance. So we'll get to those following the St. Pierre application.
Why me? Peter's on.
It's possible my wife has nothing better to do. I don't.
She hears this.
To open, as I mentioned, we have an application from Jennifer and Aaron St. Pierre. This is for some work on Torsey Pond, an existing non-conforming structure, and they have a proposal to do something with it. I think we need a little more information about exactly what the plan is. And the way we usually proceed with applications is the initial look that we take at it is for completeness. So our conversation tonight will be around whether or not the application is complete to proceed. And when we do find an application complete, we would then schedule a public hearing and a site visit if that's warranted. And so it typically takes at least 2 meetings to move through an application, often more than 2, but depending on whether or not we find it complete and what the issues are. So if I don't know who's going to do the speaking tonight, but if you would like to come up and give us a summary of what your proposal is, I'm sure there are some questions that planning board members will have. But if we could start with just a general summary of your proposal and what you intend to do.
Okay. We are looking at existing conditions of 36 Torchy Shores Road. It's an existing camp located
Jennifer, dare speak up.
52 feet from Torsey Pond. The lot slopes steeply toward the shoreline, so making the relocating structure uphill impractical. So the reconstruction is proposed within the existing footprint to minimize and maintain the natural shoreline buffer. Of course, keeping all of the shoreline in Torsey Pond in our minds. And let's see. And making sure that we do everything as far as erosion or sedimentation controls to control that so nothing ever interrupts the lake. Have any?
Yeah, could you provide a little more information and clarify for us exactly? It wasn't clear to me reading the application if you intend to demolish the existing structure and build a new one, or if you are somehow renovating that existing cabin, or exactly what's going to happen there.
We're going to try to save the building if we can, of course, or where we can see where it will start over, I think.
Yeah, we'll do as best we can to preserve some of it. I don't know that all of it can be. The biggest thing, I think, is that nothing we do is going to make it any more non-conforming. That's kind of the biggest takeaway. Same size, same structure, no closer to water, no encroachment of anyone else's property lines or anything along those lines. One of the I think bigger issues, we had Joe Stevenson do a septic design for us. That has been completed, I believe it's in the application. So,
And then we did also call the state of Maine pathologist for the trees. He came out and made sure, because we wanted to make sure that we are not imposing on any nature or trees, which we did, and we also have that as well.
a letter should be in there with his recommendations, and we
And that
followed that
was-
to a T.
And that was also, we have our tree professional that came out, so we wanted to make sure that whatever he said also went along with the state pathologist to make sure that we weren't doing anything.
So my general understanding from reading what was in our packet was that you are proposing a somewhat larger structure than what is there. The square footage is more, and it was not clear at all to me how the new structure would be positioned.
What are the, I don't know that we're proposing something that's larger.
So it's exactly the same size?
The only thing, what we're doing is the septic, he said it had to be up a little bit for the water lines.
I also thought that you were proposing a somewhat larger structure because of the answer to question 2. When you were saying you were using the 30% expansion
Yes, we did.
criterion for non-conforming structures. So is the plan to make the structure any larger, the reconstructed structure any larger than the current structure?
Slightly, because it's going to go up this slope.
You have your current structure is 12 wide by 28 long. Your new structure is 30 feet long by 14 feet. So that means that the new one is 420 feet. It's a bit larger, not much.
Yeah, just from the water, probably the septic.
And that expanded area be uphill, or where we?
Yes.
Jack?
I still don't understand that. Is the current structure going to stay there, and you're going to add on to it, or?
At this rate, we're gonna say no and start new.
So you're going to tear down
We're gonna
what you
take
have? And will there be a basement or a foundation or slab?
We're unsure.
We'd like to do a slab, but we haven't gotten that far in the plan at this point.
Because, if there is a foundation, there are certain things that the planning board has to look at as part of the overall proposal. And so we would need to know if you are proposing a foundation or a basement or anything in addition to the structure itself. The other thing that I found missing in the application that I really think we need is there isn't a site map that indicates clearly the location and the size of the current structure versus the new one. And that's really important to our review, that we understand that.
There are the 2 examples of the old and the new that are right with this.
Yeah, I can see that, but it's not helping
have this.
me.
Do you have some?
So I mean, I do have this, you can, should I share it with?
What is it that?
Yeah, that's exactly
I
right.
can have that and pass that, if that helps, like, the visual.
Henry, is that something we have in the
No,
town?
it's not, but it's exactly what you're at. It's a very specific schematic of like.
And then this is,
The lineage.
if you want, you can, this is a.
Oh, look at
If
old
you want
buck.
visuals, yeah, it kind of helps with visuals of where and what.
Is that what it looks like now, the one that we have too?
Yes.
This log cabin? We have some of this.
So I don't understand. what are we approving?
I'm not sure.
See, we're
So
not trying to be
we're just-
difficult, but for us to determine, we can't deal with a moving target. We sort of need to know what the plan is specifically before we can have a hearing about it.
Sure. Our plan really is to take something and make it livable again, like an existing, and keep it just the existing. We wish we could have the existing, but just it's not safe. So we want to make it safe. That's basically all we want to do.
If we could add 30%, we
And
would.
just-
I'm
yeah.
not sure, we've never done this.
We
so
don't know
just-
where the septic,
Yeah.
like the septic guy says it has to be here, so we're just trying to figure out basically how to do that or keep it simple.
Just thinking about the structure for a minute, it sounds like you haven't really made a decision about whether or not you'll demolish the existing one or simply reconstruct a new one.
We're probably gonna have to demolish it. It's, I don't know that it's something that we can save at this point. We'd love to keep a wall up and keep it so that, we could renovate from there, but I don't know that it's gonna be
Right, I'm
possible.
kind of like, yeah,
So,
I was hoping
yeah.
to save something, but I don't think.
And the other, as Peter just mentioned, it's important for us to know, exactly what it is that we're going to be making a decision on. And so the size and the location and exactly what the plan is, if you're going to demolish or if you're going to restore what's there, those are all important pieces of information for us.
So I guess we present it, whereas, okay, we do have to take certain portions of it down and start over. I guess we present it like that, so that way.
So you need a revised application, what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
My sense is that we need some additional information in the application before we would be able to post it to public hearing. Others, please weigh in, but I'm not feeling comfortable that we have everything that we should have. And, and it's not just us. Anyone who might be interested, other parties who might be interested, and I don't know if there are any, but we need to be able to put this out there so that people can understand exactly what it is that's being proposed. And the piece that I kept looking for, and maybe some of it is on this map that you just
We might have
circulated,
some other papers.
but we need a clear indication of what the lot looks like, dimensions, and exactly where the current structure is and where the proposed would be. Because it's somewhat
Exact.
larger, it's not going to fit exactly where the current structure fits. So it's important for us to know what direction the larger portion is going to go in.
And it's only one direction because it's the steep, so it does show it on the photos. I tried to do a visual of it, so that way it gives an idea exactly what it is. Because it can only go one way because it's non-conforming.
I feel like this may seem incredibly complicated to this process, but it's important that you just provide as much clarity on like your decisions, and when you you have to get to that certain point where you're able to get approval from the planning board for those decisions. So you'll need to decide whether you're going to replace or keep a wall or whatever you're going to do. And once you get to that point, then I think you can augment this. Don't worry, you don't have to pay twice. But you have to probably augment the application here to be more specific. So the key things are going to be, what are you going to do with the structure? Are you going to keep it, are you going to replace it, are you going to keep some of it? Those things are important. The second thing then is the foundation decision. You're going to have to make that decision because that does change, as Paul was saying, the way the planning board and the rules that apply to the property will be different depending on what you choose to do. And Chip can probably give you some ideas about what that means, but some of them are not as complicated and others are much more complicated.
And you may have, some of that information, particularly, the sizes and the locations in what you just circulated. But I'm feeling like the application itself should be augmented with that kind of detail and with information about the issues that we just discussed as well.
My experience also suggests the more detail you provide, the better it will be. Just because it's just fascinating.
Other questions or comments?
Well, just a comment on going back to number 2 where it says make the structure safe and bring it up to usable year-round standard. Now, that, I think, typically what we see is a foundation. There's something may lack the foundation before, but I don't know if there's something else you're thinking about when you say usable year-round standard. So, if you can be more detailed about what that means. That would be important.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've done other projects in other towns, and when we did the Livermore, for example, we had on posts, and we spray foamed underneath, and we boxed in the water coming up through, and insulated the drain line and things along those lines. So we've done that. We're not sure if we want to put the expense into putting a foundation at this point.
Right,
So
that's the part.
we don't know if we want to heat trace the water line coming up through from the well, if we how we want to handle the drainage, because underneath there you get your traps and things along those lines that have water year round in them no matter what. So that's kind of where we're at. We're not sure if the cost outweighs the benefit of either way. We don't know at this point.
And part of the process that we go through, because it's been implied here, that if you do, let's say you said you want to put a full foundation in, that does change how we look at it, and it does bring into play the maximum extent practical in terms of meeting the setback requirement. So that could factor into your decision as well.
It changes the square footage also.
It could.
Foundation.
It could.
Yeah. So when we measure, when we look at the structure, we keep it 12 by 28. 12 by 28, right? So that's what it is. And the original, keep it exactly what it is. No foundation. Would that clean things up enough to provide enough detail? You still need the exact location. It sounds like, what are you looking for the exact location?
We're not
Dimensions?
changing location.
Well, if you're, it's still, it's unclear to me what this indicates. Is that the current structure?
Yes. The black
The
square.
little
Rectangle, yes.
It's just that if you were changing, if you were changing that to 14 by 30, we'd have to know which way,
briefly.
2 feet, you
Briefly.
know what I mean?
Now, the 30%, could that be up?
Well, that's another issue, but there really isn't 30% in Readfield's ordinance.
Yes.
That's something that shows up in the state shoreline zoning guidelines, but Readfield has taken a slightly different approach to that. And expansions are possible, but it's not keyed off that 30%, which is in the state minimum guidelines. We've taken a slightly different approach.
Which is a percentage base? Or
It's not percentage, no.
It's based on feet or distance from the water or something along those lines?
It's,
What is that?
it's based on a couple of things. There is a maximum square footage. If you're talking about an expansion, there is a maximum square footage that is allowed dependent on how far from the lake your proposed structure is. In this case, I don't think those square footages would be relevant because you're talking about a very small structure. And so I think if it's anything less than 75 feet, if you're expanding, the entire structure can't exceed 1,000 square feet, and you don't exceed that anyway. So that piece of it would not be relevant. But any expansion you would need to demonstrate that the original structure is located in such a way that it meets setbacks to the greatest practical extent before we could consider expansion. Well, that's our determination to make. The greatest practical extent, and there's some guidelines in the ordinance about what that means, and that's a specific determination that the planning board would have to make.
You said your septic is dependent on what you have for foundation.
Well, the height.
Right.
Yeah.
So does that affect where you're putting it, or
No.
just how you're putting it?
Yeah, it's how we're doing it, yeah. Because it's not going any closer or moving any.
Yeah, and please don't misunderstand me. We're not saying it's going to be a problem for you to expand. We haven't determined that. But under any circumstance, I think we do need the additional detail and clarity about exactly what it is that you intend to do. Demolition versus renovation, the foundation, the position of the current structure on the lot and its dimensions.
It's going to have to be the exact position.
And again, we're not saying it has to stay exactly as it is, but we need the information whether or not you choose to expand. We need to understand exactly what it is we're approving.
The more you do, the more you change, the more view, the more questions, and the more considerations for different impact, let's call it, we'll have to go through. So your question earlier was, what if I just kept it the same size, it's the same building, and I just do the same time?
But even a,
So the more you do, the more, it's pretty intuitive, I think.
if you are reconstructing, any reconstruction or replacement has to be in compliance with the ordinance to the greatest practical extent. So that greatest practical extent test really is relevant whether or not you're expanding. So if you're reconstructing, that test is still considered. If you're expanding, we also look at that.
And I don't know if that map, that site plan, you want to see the location of your proposed building or number of feet from the sideline, from the water, from the road, because you're located in one plan and we're approving, so that's where the house will be. You can't go out there and say, well, we're going to move it 20 feet over here, even though the planning board didn't give us permission. So if you want permission from us to locate this new structure or whatever, we need to see all the measurements.
So that's from the lake, from the side property boundaries, from the road.
Okay, so the drawing of it is not,
I think it's probably...
because that, I do
that one
have
you have.
every single.
That one you have is better, I don't know if it has.
From every
It has-
property line and all the link to the cabin.
And that's-
Exact measurements.
That's for the current.
That's for, yeah, that's for,
And the proposed.
and the proposed.
Right. But if the new one is 2 feet wide and 2 feet longer,
Right.
But yeah, that has all the measurements for the current. Okay.
It's just important for us to have as much clarity as possible in the application. Even things that don't seem particularly important, but for example, in your part of the answer to item 2, you talk about making this suitable for year-round use. There's nothing wrong with that, but in answer to question 5, it says the proposed use of the new building would be a seasonal camp. Again, if you want to make it suitable for year-round use, you probably don't want to call it a seasonal camp, but again, this may or may not be important, but we need as much clarity as possible, both for our benefit and benefit of any member of the public who may wish to comment on your application.
Sure.
Did you have a good bedtime reading in the land use ordinance? Do you even know what I'm talking about? Did you even know this exists? So in Readfield, there's the land use ordinance, right? Did you see this already?
Probably. I don't know.
So
I really remember looking
it's
at
just,
it.
it's very legalese, policy kind of stuff, but it does lay out kind of all this stuff that we're sort of going to look at, so you can kind of look at that. So it can show you where that is. The pages.
There's
We did take a look
a
at
whole
Yeah.
section specifically on
You can have a
non-conforming
beer and read
structures.
this, and then have another beer, because you'll need it after your beer. But the idea there is that it has all this stuff in there, like, okay, what if I move them? Does that mean what if I expand it?
I
Just kind
mean,
of.
Chip covered a lot with me, we went over a lot of stuff.
Yeah, good.
She went through it, she made an attempt, to the most practical extent, and everything else.
I think I screwed up the application. It wasn't her, it was me. So I hate to own that right now.
Throwing yourself under the bus.
I don't know that
She
it's,
can't hurt me in front of everyone else.
I don't know that it's screwed up necessarily, but I think
No, it's fine.
there is some information that, that we do need that just isn't there yet, so.
We'll revise it.
So we,
And
Are there any,
something that we can't cover and put in there because we're all here, is that something that has to be?
we really need it to be in the application. We need a complete application that exists, not only for us, but as Peter just mentioned, anyone else who might be interested in it. And that application kind of forms the legal framework for any approval that we might issue later on. So you would be bound by what is specifically in our application. So it's important from a legal perspective too.
All right, well, now we know.
And do you have any other questions for us?
I think we covered it.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your time.
See you again soon.
Oh, yes. Leaving us so soon.
But Angelica said I wasn't allowed to say anything, so. It wasn't time. I'm the butter.
There will be time.
There will.
There will be a
Watch
time.
for the public hearing. I will. Don't forget what I told you though, Peter.
You want to share?
Yeah, well, I told Paula, Holly Ramlow was a member of the appeals board, by the way, that's why she knows me. Though she was a near neighbor of mine up the road a little bit. She emailed me the other day and said she was going to appear. I said, this is only completeness determination at this point. I have no idea what she was going to say, but the thing she did say in her email was, that old shack, that old thing, that's not been habitable for a long time. Does it still have grandfathered rights? I said, I have no idea. I don't know, and I'm not going to give you legal advice. So just as it happened, I happened to have a conversation yesterday with our town attorney about something else. And I said, oh, by the way, the grandparent rights ever expire? Because a structure becomes uninhabitable? No, they don't.
So unless it's removed and gone for a year.
But just because it deteriorated, in this case it just deteriorated, it wasn't removed. So I did not talk to Holly, and that, I guess she'll see that as bad news. I don't know. I have no idea.
And when you say it's not habitable, if it's only a seasonal structure, how do you define habitable?
Well, she may have more information about this. I have no clue.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so, second item on our agenda, we have public hearings on new text in the solar ordinance having to do with construction bonds. And we also have the LUO amendment concerning an alternate CEO. Kristen Collins, the town attorney, is joining us for this portion of the meeting, specifically to address the LUO revision, the proposed revision, although we might be able to discuss the solar ordinance with her as well. So I will open the hearing on the proposed solar ordinance language, which would add a construction bond requirement. And Henry, you were the principal author of this language that we've all had an opportunity to discuss, but if you would like to summarize it in case there is,
Sure.
I don't know that there's anyone else from the outside, but to refresh everyone's memory and
Absolutely.
initiate this hearing.
So the town is looking to put in an additional standard of approval into the ordinance related to only the large and medium scale ground mounted solar energy systems. So the commercial level systems that we've had applications for in our community. Related to putting a requirement in related to a construction bond in order to provide the town additional assurance that the developer or developers would follow through with all the components of the required approvals and the certificate of occupancy, or what's it called? Is that what it's called?
Certificate of use.
Certificate of use granted by the CEO, but also following the planning board's approval of whatever they've decided to do. And the reason we are recommending we want to do this, as you will all recall from our previous discussions, is because both of our actually commercial grade solar projects were not actually built to specification of approval with the town, and it has caused a lot of time and consternation from the town, in order to try and get those things corrected. And in the last case, can't remember the name of the project now, Norwich, thank you. We were unsuccessful in getting some of those components corrected. So we had no choice but to compromise, and we felt like that was not a good outcome for the community ultimately. So the purpose of this is to provide incentive to the developers to make sure that what they are approved of, they execute that, and if they have a deviation from that, they should come back to the planning board and approve for that deviation, which is a perfectly valid process. But what we don't want to have happen is what we now have happened twice in our community, which is, and this is to provide incentive to developers so they sort of get the idea that they have to pay closer attention to those aspects of their plans. So that's the concept, and that's why we're doing this.
And I think in both of those cases, my recollection is that we concluded that they really were not focused on the specifics of the approval. There were different people within the company dealing with the execution of it than dealt with the licensing and permitting. And
That's right.
And as Henry said, this was designed to hopefully cause them to be more attentive to those details and follow through.
I'll add just more things. I don't think this is in no way punitive towards the development. It doesn't discourage development in any way. It just provides a little more focus and assurance to make sure these projects are executed in the appropriate way in which we've approved them. The relationship between the CEO, any CEO, not our CEO, but any CEO, and sort of that approval process, it is different for these projects than it is, say, for industrial building or something. You can't see the power flowing through the line, so it's really hard to know. And a lot of these properties, as you know, are sort of in one case, you don't see it every day when you're driving down the road, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, it's not something you can kind of keep up with easily, as you would say another project. So it presents some challenges. Anyway, that's the purpose. It is also worth noting that this is a fairly common kind of approach with other projects, particularly large construction projects in communities. We're applying that to the large solar project constructions, which I think is reasonable. And then also, there are other solar ordinances in the state of Maine that have a similar approach. So this is not like we're the first. So I would just point those two things out.
As I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, the town attorney, Kristen Collins, has joined us on Zoom. And she had no comments on the specific language because I did send it to her a couple of weeks ago and asked her to look at it. She had no comments on the specific language, but she did have a question of policy, which I have mentioned to Henry. And Kristen, I'd like to give you an opportunity to put that out for the rest of the planning board members, if you would like to do that for us.
Sure. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I find myself having to be in the car after a late meeting. So I did respond to Paula about the policy piece of this. And it is relatively common for ordinances to require something like a performance bond or other guarantee. But usually that's related to public improvements that a project would be putting forward. So if it's utility connections or stormwater or sidewalks or things like that, and there's a public benefit that's, derived from those things, we want to ensure that they get built. The other time that it's used frequently is in subdivisions, because it's somewhat common that, a developer will build out and sell lots, but then abscond, leaving the roads unfinished or the utilities unfinished. And that gives us a way, for the benefit of the people who have now bought into the subdivision, to get the improvements completed. But in either case, the primary goal is to have the town have a source of funds so that it completes the work. And that has to be something that the town is willing to use this performance bond for, to actually complete the work. And the point that I was raising in my comments is there's really no greater deterrent than withholding the certificate of use, because what they really want is to be able to connect their project. And we are able to determine when it's connected, to the grid, and to prevent that from happening by preventing the issuance of the certificate of use. I don't know that the fact that they've already paid for a performance bond and now it's sitting there and the town has access to it is that much of a deterrent, because their bond rating maybe gets hit a little bit, but they purchase essentially an insurance policy, and the outlay for that is in the beginning, and they don't get it back, if they successfully complete the project, depending on the type of guarantee. So what I was thinking instead, if the concern has been that these developers haven't completed their projects the right way, maybe it's that there needs to be more regimented during the construction phase to go over the project elements, to make sure that there's a site visit at each one of those benchmarks, and that they not be permitted to proceed any further if those benchmarks haven't been met, or if the work they've done in that compliance period hasn't met the elements of the plan. Because we really shouldn't be in a position of making compromises. It should be, you didn't do the work in accordance with the plan, and therefore, until you get approval of any changes, you don't get a project.
I don't disagree with what you're suggesting. I would just say I don't think it's, I think having both is probably fine. I mean, I understand I would call it policing of the project as it's being built, right? Our experience, Kristen, is that it's extremely complicated with these solar projects. They are not like a regular development. I would put them even on the scale of more complicated than a subdivision kind of approach. You've got multiple parties, multiple companies. Those same companies aren't the ones that we're talking to. Very difficult for the CEO to manage that in a community like Readfield. So I don't disagree with you, though. I think that's a good analysis, but I think this also perhaps creates a paper deterrent. I mean, the chances of us actually using it are probably zero or close to zero, but the reality is that we want to make sure that we are not ever in that compromising situation again, to use your words too. I mean, that's our experience, unfortunately. Not once, but twice.
As I understood you previously, Kristen, I didn't hear that you had a specific problem with including this language, just that you didn't feel it was necessary and there was a better way to achieve compliance than using the construction bond approach. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm having a hard time well, like all land use restrictions, we have to have a bona fide rational basis for why we're requiring it. And the cost of performance bonds I believe it's for the entire project you'd be requiring, right, are quite expensive. And if you remember how most of these projects are structured, it's usually some developer who's building the project, and they have a lot of cost outlays at the beginning, and they don't receive any revenue, of course, until the project has generated energy for a while. So they're going to see this as a pretty material deterrent. And then on the flip side of that, the question is, what does the town get out of it that's assurance that these projects get completed properly? And what you have to envision, I think, is that the town would acquire that bond money and actually construction manage that project to completion. And my concern with that is oftentimes a non-performing developer is a developer that is not doing well financially. And now the town has used its resources to complete its project for it, only to have a project that, maybe is not going to function.
I think our experience has not been a financial inability, but shortcuts. And so, I mean, in theory, Kristen, if there were default, couldn't we use that money on a performance bond to hire another contractor to do the job to do that portion of the job the right way? It could be a matter of earthwork, for example, replanting trees, planting new trees where the original applicant cut down too many. I mean, there are certain things that could be accomplished with that bond money, I think.
But
that's the example.
My response to that would be, why wouldn't you just deny the use permit, and they either comply with their own money and their own people and their own work, or they're not going to get their use permit, and eventually the project is abandoned per the ordinance and they have to decommission and remove everything.
I would, I appreciate this conversation. I can see it from different perspectives. I think this addition to the ordinance serves our community purpose well, and it's a good idea for the town of Readfield based upon our actual experience that's occurred with these developers. I do appreciate the other perspective. This does not require the town to do anything with the money. It says may, it doesn't mean we're going to do anything. It provides that control back to a relationship between the developer, the planning board, and the CEO, and ultimately the town, to the town manager. But it doesn't require the town to do anything. So, I guess I would just, if we had a positive experience with these developers, and this is only, again, for these large-scale commercial projects, right? If we had a positive experience overall with some of these projects, then we probably wouldn't need this. Hence, we haven't even talked about it before. But because our experience suggests otherwise, I think it's pretty important that we have something here that creates a little bit more of a less work for the town kind of situation with the developer.
Medium scale.
Yeah, but that's also utility scale. He said medium scale in case you didn't hear.
Wasn't one of the issues with one of the projects that they couldn't plant the trees till the spring or the fall, but they could go online, let's say in December, and you were pressing them to come in June and plant the trees. So do you give them a certificate of use because they're ready to go online, but they haven't planted some trees that they say they'll do in 6 months?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, your point, there's a lot of pressure from these developers to get that certificate of use. As to Kristen's point, they want to make their money, start making their money. So there's an enormous amount of pressure from those folks on the CEO to give them that certificate of use. And I agree with the point that we shouldn't give that until we have that absolute point in time, but there's always exceptions to this, and our experience has been that we're not talking trees, we're talking, in one case they put the entire array in a different location. So, that's not an insignificant change.
Jumping back in, why did we not issue a notice of violation and stop work order on those projects if they did something that wrong?
It requires having somebody sort of on the job.
Yeah, we're a small town.
We're a small town, so, if we could hire our own expert to go out there and check on each stage, we could do that.
Yeah, I just mean that eventually it came to the planning board. It was put on everybody's radar, and you didn't have to compromise. They could have just been held in violation until they moved everything to be in conformance with the project, or they got approval for the new, whatever they had done, but after the fact.
True, but that's not what happened.
Yeah, I just, in terms of how to avoid these situations, all I want to emphasize is I think that being more rigid with the enforcement of their adherence to the plan is by far the best guarantee of getting the project built the way you want. Because I've been through this process of having to call bonds. And the first point is it requires a lot of legal money, to actually call the bond, and the companies often push back. And then the towns lack the ability to access the property in order to use the money to put in the improvements, or there's some fight about what they can actually do. So it's never, in my experience, it's never been a way to actually fix what's wrong, and a lot of burden falls on the town when it could be addressed better by a more rigid compliance schedule and making them meet with you to go over the project mid-construction.
Understood. This just gives us the opportunity, this just gives us the opportunity to have some financial backup in case.
As I recall, this language Henry, it doesn't specify that any construction bond would be for the full amount of the project. It could be for
Correct.
any amount, and the planning board makes that determination on a case-by-case basis.
And parts of the bond be released as milestones are met.
It's pretty flexible the way we wrote this, so it does not necessarily have to apply to the whole project, and it is, as you correctly point out, established through a discussion between the planning board for each project with input from the CEO and other professionals, assumingly and the developers professionals as well, in order to make that determination. I don't think we're here to prevent them from building the project. That's not the idea. The idea is to make sure that maybe some of the more specific requests for this community are make sure they're done in compliance with what we're expecting. Anyway, that's the purpose of it. That's why it's here today. Again, it's not supposed to be controversial. Sorry if it came across that way.
Other comments? Any other questions for Kristen or in general? I don't see any other parties on Zoom.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, John.
I just wanted to ask Kristen, what was the alternative that you said instead of getting a performance bond?
My suggestion, and this is somewhat unorthodox, but normally that you'd have them meet with the code enforcement officer in some regimented schedule. So it might be at 20% completion, 50% completion, 75% completion, or no more, less frequently than every 3 months during the construction phase, to do a site visit and determine compliance with the plan. And then the language would say that if at any of those benchmarks, it's determined that there are any violations or non-conformance with the plan, a stop work order shall issue, and they can't proceed until they've, either received approval of changes to the plan or brought it into conformance. That way you're not getting a project that is now 95% complete but done wrong, and you're in a position of either calling a bond or bringing an enforcement action or making a compromise.
Okay. Thank you.
We can do both.
Do both. Good idea, do both.
Anything else? Anyone? Comments, questions? Okay. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
So, what's your pleasure? What we need to decide tonight on each of these proposed revisions to ordinances is whether or not we want to accept the language to forward to the select board through Eric for their inclusion on a warrant for town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to forward this language to the select board for inclusion on a warrant. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Okay. It's unanimous. So the second hearing tonight concerns the land use ordinance. Looking at Article 2, Section 1. And this is the proposal that came to us from the select board, which would authorize the town manager to appoint an alternate CEO. Currently, the language in the ordinance authorizes the town manager to appoint the CEO. This language would add authority to appoint an alternate as well.
Paul, can I interrupt? Is this a public hearing?
Yes, I will open the public hearing. So there is, and you all received, there was a memo that came from the select board via Eric, and it laid out the rationale for this language and the reason why it was felt to be appropriate and necessary to include in the LUO. And that was a memo dated, I think you've all seen it.
March 9.
What's that?
March 9.
March 9th. I've got it here somewhere. So, the language specifically states that an alternate may be appointed to a term which shall be no less than 1 year, except for temporary appointments of an alternate CEO, which may be for a shorter duration. The alternate CEO shall have all the duties, responsibilities, and authority of the CEO in the absence of the CEO, in the event of a conflict of interest involving the CEO, or in support of the CEO as directed by the town manager. Town manager shall notify all appropriate state agencies of each appointment. As you all know, there has been some discussion about the statutes that are related to this authority, and some disagreement about interpretation of the statute related to it. Kristen and Eric are both here to represent the select board's interest, and Kristen, as I understand it, now you're prepared to address the statutory authority for the ordinance language and the proposed change to the ordinance.
Yes, except for that I'd correct that I represent the select board's interest. I just represent the town's interest generally.
The town's interest generally, okay. So the disagreement appears to be whether or not the town manager is legally authorized to appoint the CEO and an alternate, as opposed to the select board itself. And if we could start, Kristen, by you explaining your perspective on that issue.
Yes. So we start with home rule, which says that municipalities can, by charter or ordinance, do most anything that's not otherwise controlled by some state statute. So that's the premise. And then on top of that, by statute, there is the town manager plan. And the town manager plan says that where there is a town manager that is appointed to serve a town as part of its form of government, the town manager has the duty and authority to appoint any officials that are required by law. And so the code enforcement officer is an official that is required by law. There is another statute that governs the CEO's appointment. That CEO appointment power in the statute, it does say that it comes from the select board. And in towns that don't have a town manager, it is the select board who makes the appointment. But once you've invoked the town manager plan statute by having a town manager, that statute says that all officials that are required by law are appointed by the town manager. So sort of referring to that other statute, this takes precedence and says the town manager makes the appointment. And, that holds true for lots of other town positions too that are statutory positions. And it's my understanding that the town has always operated per the town manager plan. Also, there's no charter that sort of would take precedence to that town manager plan statute. So very clear, it's in the main code enforcement officer's manual that if the town has a town manager, the town manager makes the appointment. So not really going out on a limb and saying this.
Kristen, is that an MMA document, the code enforcement officer manual?
It is, yeah. And then I believe there's reference to that. There's no town manager's manual, but there is the municipal officer's manual. And when it talks about forms of government and town manager, it references the fact that the town manager makes the appointments. I also did some case law research. I didn't find any cases specifically discussing appointment of the code enforcement officer, but I did find a number of cases that talked about, you know, the town subject to the case operating under the town manager plan. Therefore, the town manager made the appointment of such official as, you know, was at issue in the case.
Okay, so are there questions, comments from planning board members?
I'm simply going to adhere, I'm not going to repeat this. My position was expressed at the March 10 planning board meeting. And I amplified upon that slightly in a memo and email dated March 12 that was sent to each member of the planning board. In the March 12 memo email, I was responding in part to an email from the town manager that was sent only to the chair of the planning board, not to the rest of the members of the planning board, including me. And I would just say, I have no doubt that there's power to appoint an alternate. I still have doubt in my mind about who's the proper appointing authority. In terms of when you go beyond the alternate, who has a one-year term as proposed, I'm not sure there's authority to hire temporaries who have less than a one-year term, since the two state statutes say specifically the CEO's term is for 1 year, not less than 1 year. And that's really all I want to say on this subject.
Personally, I'm very persuaded by the arguments that the town attorney and Eric have made. I've spent some time looking at the statutory language myself, and my own personal analysis is that the overall context of all of this, if you look at the broader context, although there are sections that talk specifically about the municipal officers appointing the CEO, that to me becomes subordinate to the piece concerning the town manager plan, where it specifically talks about the powers and duties of a town manager if in fact you have the town manager form of government, which we do. And it specifically says that unless otherwise provided by town ordinance, the municipal officers shall appoint. Our town ordinance specifically states that the town manager has that authority to appoint the CEO, and in this case, the new language would be an alternate. Others, questions or comments?
What has the town done? Surely the town has had situations where our CEO or predecessor CEOs have been absent for a certain time period, sick or extended leave or something. What happens in those circumstances under statute now? Like what would the town do? In other words, why is it necessary to have that in the local ordinance? Like what is I just don't know. I'm looking at Eric, maybe.
I can give a short answer. First, Peter, I want to apologize if I offended you with any more comments or written statements. I wasn't intending to do anything other than clearly present a point. So I apologize if I came across that way. And I understand your perspective, I just disagree. So I respect your role in the committee and certainly don't want to give that other impression.
No, well, you're entitled to disagree with me, of course. What offended me was that you didn't copy me on your criticism of me in your email to the chair of the planning board and to both the current and forthcoming CEOs.
So just to respond to that quickly, I was following a normal path of communication. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for me to communicate to the entire board. I prefer to work through the chairs when I communicate with boards and committees. So again, it wasn't anything intentional. If there was criticism, it was of the merits of the argument, not of you personally. So to your point, Henry, we have had multiple situations where we've had transitions in code enforcement officers, and we haven't done it the right way. We've had somebody come in without an LPI license and kind of fill the gap temporarily. We've had people we've hired from other towns fill in, again, temporarily without a formal appointment. And that to me is risky and really not how it should be done. We've also had cases where I believe we've needed support in the office, particularly around like the solar example is a great example. Perhaps with some additional resources there, we could find the right solutions. So there have been times where I believe we could use the support. There have been times where we've had transitions that haven't happened well because we weren't able to do it legally, really. We just did it and the state kind of looked away a little bit and we looked away a little bit. But that's not what I want to do going forward. And I also found that with trying to bring someone on to train, that there's a challenge there as well. So I think that there's lots of different reasons for this, but primarily it is to just make sure that we can legally appoint somebody so that any decisions or outcomes or efforts that are made happen legally. So that's fine.
May I jump in and answer that as well?
Yes, please go ahead, Kristen.
So an interim CEO can be appointed in the circumstance where the CEO has resigned or retired or been terminated. But there is no similar way to handle, what if the CEO is on vacation? What if they're out on a medical leave? That kind of thing, because you can't appoint somebody to serve as a CEO when you already have a CEO. So to be able to appoint an alternate, and I'll grant that maybe it does need to be for the full year, but you only call on them as needed. That provides something that we don't already have, which is the ability to have someone fill in while still having an appointed CEO.
I see. Good. Thank you.
Peter, I have a question for you. Given the argument that you've made about this, it strikes me that your argument pertains to both the appointment of the CEO and also appointment of an alternate. Is that correct? Am I understanding you correctly? I mean, if you use the rationale in terms of the existing language, it holds, correct? That you believe that authority is not there.
Well, I think the authority is unsettled. For example, town attorney has pointed me to one portion of the MMA manual, but there's another portion of the MMA manual that says that the town manager can appoint a CEO, but it must be confirmed by the select board, which is an interesting. I don't see the word confirmation anywhere in the statute, but I think it's unclear. But the lack of clarity would apply both to the full-time CEO and to the alternate CEO. Yeah, if that's your question.
Other comments? Questions? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion is second to close the hearing. Further discussion? All those in favor? John?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, so again, our purpose tonight is to make a decision about whether this language should be accepted to further along to the select board for inclusion in the warrant.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the language and send it to the select board. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Kristen, thank you very much for your help. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Have a good night.
Good night. Okay. To all, I think we have minutes from March 10th to consider. And Angelica, I just had one suggestion in the March 10th minutes, and that's there was discussion about this issue, about the CEO, alternate CEO language. And if you could just change deputy in that to alternate.
Sure.
It's the only thing I had. Anyone else have changes?
No, I think you did a really good job. Because, you know, at the time, I did reference section 2001. It was incorrect reference, but that's what I said.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Nothing else? Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
John is aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
2 abstentions. Henry and Don. Okay. The only other issue, and Chip brought this to my attention before the meeting started, and apparently Mr. Morash has contacted you. Is that correct?
His representative.
Okay.
Jim
So,
Lake Placid.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure how it's possible, but he claimed that the snow is gone down there.
Last weekend.
It was before last weekend? Oh, okay, all right, well, that explains it then. So I really think it's important for us to do a site visit, but I think we need to be able to see the property. And I know there's a lot of snow at my house, and I find it hard to believe that there's no snow down there. So I think the 2 options are either we schedule something tonight. I'm a little uncomfortable doing that, quite honestly, or waiting until next time and we can see what things look like, and likely at the next meeting we would be able to schedule a site visit and a hearing and so forth. So what's your pleasure?
That's what we're coming to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, March is the snowiest month usually. You can't predict things here.
Yeah, it's been great.
And it's mud season coming up, it already is. That's the last thing I want to do is go to the
Yeah,
site.
quicksand.
Around.
Okay, so let's revisit the Moorish question at our next meeting, which is the 14th of April, and see where things stand.
The daffodils will be up by then, that'll be good.
Well, I'd like to think so, but I don't.
We have another application coming to the next meeting, that'd be the Greenmans on the small engine shop on Plains Road.
Okay. And that's an application that's ready to
Yep.
go?
Paid for, ready, and I'll distribute it this week.
What's the name?
Greenman?
Jasmine and Jerry.
Where is it?
3 something Plains Road.
I think it's green.
It's your house.
Yeah, it's not mine.
Is yours 393?
Now, where
Oh.
that is that past the tracks or before the tracks?
That would have to be past the tracks.
That's past the tracks, yeah.
So quite a ways down.
We also, just FYI, everybody at Angelica sat in on it with me. The representative for the new solar farm came in and spoke to us about his project, which is just down the hill from you. And I think we might have scared him away, but
And the issue was the CID,
the
correct?
CID, correct. He wanted to know why he couldn't do it concurrently like the last application. I said, it's the way it's done.
The last application was not done concurrently, so. Okay, all right, well, we have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
And anything else, anyone? Okay, thanks very much, we're adjourned.